Thank you and a ahead for tuning into my video. In this video, I'm going to show you how to pull your CP3 pump in 2.5 hours. Yep, 2.5 hours is what I got mine done out of. But this is a 2007 Chevy Silverado 2500 HD Classic, and it has a LBZ. And the reason why I'm replacing my CP3 pump is because I'm getting a low fuel rail pressure code, which is a P0087. And the pump that I'm going to be replacing it with is the industrial injection 42% over pump. Got it for a good deal, and that's why I'm pulling the pump out to get that put back in. But one of the things that I've done before getting to the pump replacement was read a lot of forums say replace your fuel lines because they get soft and brittle and collapse under heat and pressure, which I did all of them, and it still was doing it. So I replaced my fuel rail pressure valve with the race plug, and that still was doing it, pulling the code. And then eventually I put a lift pump on, and still it was doing the same thing. So my last conclusion was that it's a CP3 pump, which some I did not want to do, but I done it. And I actually went off of this one video, a guy named General Mechanic, who pretty much done this same thing the way that I done it, and it seemed to work out for him and it seemed to work out for me. So I'm making another video, and this is what I'm going to show you how I done it. As you can see, the only thing I took off on the fan was just a shroud. Fan's still intact, everything's still there. So the only things that I took off was cold air intake. I have an air raid cold air intake I took off the air horn that goes to the turbo, took that off. DEGR system, took that off. And then after the DEGR system, I took off the alternator. But first, before doing any of this, make sure you disconnect your batteries. But back to alternator removal, got that out of the way. Removed the AC compressor, just put that up out of the way. After that, I went and started removing my coolant tube here, the crossover, got that removed. When you undo that, coolant will run, so just put a catch can underneath to catch it. What did I do next? After that, once I got that all exposed, it pretty much exposed the CP3 pump. And as if you can, when you look at the CP3 pump, you'll see that there's a couple fuel lines up on top of it. So I disconnected the rubber hoses. I think there was one from here to the pump, one from there to the pump, and this one goes from here just to there. Loosened this one here. I took off the intake fuel line here first, covered it because you don't want dirt to get in there, because once you do and hook it back up, it's just going to put dirt that fell in there straight back into your CP3 pump. You don't want that to happen. So loosen this, get that up out of the way. There's a clamp here holding this fuel line, get that up out of the way, and that'll expose a lot more of your CP3 pump. Once you get that far, as you can see, I removed my Y bridge, and believe me, that is a pain in the butt. But anyways, the hardest bolts to get was the lower back ones, and this one up here. This one up here did not want to come out because it hit up against the turbo, but with the little prying of the screwdriver, it eventually came out. To get this bolt off, you would have to stick a screwdriver in here between the turbo and this little coolant line and pry it back, and that will give you enough room to get an extension with 10 mil back up in there to get it. Once you get that bolt, it'll drop, unless you have like a magnetic tip socket or something. You'll be able to get it out, but don't worry, you'll be able to get that out. Once you get that loose, pull the Y pipe up just about maybe 1/2 inch to the front of the motor and out, and it will come out, and that will expose more of the CP3 pump. Once you get that done, then I went to the front here. I removed the oil fill tube. There should be a bolt here, that one there, and one right here to the fan shroud. Remove that. And once you do that, there's some bolts back here. I'm not sure if you see it. You see there's one there, one down there, and on this side there's one right there, and there's another one right below it. Those are the 4 that you got to remove, and that's the 4 that's holding the CP3, which is right here. And if you look in the front, those 4 bolts, there's 1, 2, 3, 4. Once you get that loose, take a screwdriver and pry using the engine block, not the coolant water pump crossover, because that is soft, brittle, and that will crack. Put up in between the motor and the pump and pry equally on both sides, and eventually the pump will pop back. If it's still having problems coming out, you could take a long screwdriver and stick it down in here in the I don't got anything to point it out with, but in the oil fill tube, you'll see this big nut. You'll see it sitting right there. If you look down in there, you'll see it sitting right there. You can stick a screwdriver in there and pry it back too, and that'll eventually push the pump back. Once you got the pump loose, move it back, and this will be in the way, so I just went up and out of the way like that. Pulling out and in a clockwise motion, giving it a twist, this will eventually get up the way too, but just slowly bend it up out of the way and the pump will come out. And that's how I got it under 2.5 hours. I think that's all that I think I've done to this. What's another thing that I'm missing? Oh, when you're removing the 4 bolts here, I forgot, there's a coolant crossover tube. I don't know if you can see it. This one here, it's a small hose. Remove only the right clamp, move it back, and use a screwdriver and push this line over. In order to do that, there's another bolt holding this coolant line, which is this one. That's the same one that runs down there. There's a bracket right next to one of the 2 bolts that you took out on this side that's holding it. You don't have to take it out completely. You could just loosen it, and that'll give this line here some movement. You see, it's able to move. So once you do that, put a screwdriver on that little cooler line I said down there and push it over this way, and that'll give you enough room to remove that one bolt, the bottom bolt on this side. And that's the only other trouble that I came across. And then other than that, yeah. So right now I'm just gonna get a shop vac and clean that all out, clean the wide bridge area out. But other than that, everything seemed good when I was taking it off. And then another thing I found too was a boost leak on the EGR system here, of where it goes into the Y pipe here, not the seal, but on top on the flange. There was a leak that I found. Good thing I done that and found that leak. But like I said, if you have any questions, just go ahead and feel free to leave me a comment, and I'll do my best to answer your questions. But thank you for tuning into my video, and I'll give you an update hopefully on this when I'm done. Have a good one.